Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness podcast. I'm here with co-host Walter Dials, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors here in Bethesda, Maryland. We also have with us today my business partner, Corby McGordon from Ennis Legacy Partners. Our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building transferable or sellable business value, and then for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that is transferable and then exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. So in building transferable or sellable business value, there are a number of key drivers of business value you've heard us talk about in this podcast, if you've listened at all before, such as financial performance, a growth strategy, recurring revenue, diversified customer base, and strong systems and processes, just to name a few. But and then in regard to the systems and processes, the right technology solutions are foundational to having these strong, repeatable systems in place. But it can be extremely difficult. It can seem impossible at times to know what tech solutions are the right ones for your particular situation when there seems to be an endless list of options.
Right.
And then once if you've successfully chosen the right option, implementing it can even be tougher to implement it within your organization. We see this often. And it's understandable. We're business owners, and we understand the challenge of choosing the right technology and then getting it implemented throughout the organization, where change is never easy to put in place to begin with. So that's our topic today. We want to help you improve your processes and systems with the right technology. And our guest is an expert in helping owners know what would be the best solution for their business, helping them choose it from off the shelf of so many different options, and then helping them actually get it implemented throughout the organization. Andrea Dunathan is the owner and principal consultant of Dunathan Consulting, which she founded in 2004. Andrea helps growing businesses make the best use of their people, processes, and technology to support the business's growth and increase its future sale value. She's worked with a variety of clients, from global corporations to small nonprofits, improving internal operations to free up the owner and their employees to do their best work. Her client focus is business owners who want to scale up their operations to handle rapid growth, and then also business owners who want to get their businesses in good shape, get those systems and processes in good shape to maximize the sale value of the company. We would refer one of our comprehensive exit planning clients to Andrea if they needed any type of assistance in revising, creating, or implementing a process or a system that could protect or accelerate their business value. So Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pat. I'm really glad to be here with you all.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to this conversation. And I think Walter has the first question to kick us off here.
Yeah, I'll start things off. How you doing, Andrea? Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Let me ask you kind of a basic question. And I think all my questions will be basic since I'm not exactly a techie. But I guess when I think of technology, I think of, how many monitors are you going to have on your desk? How many, whatever they're called, that, back up your files and stuff like that. But in this day and age, and you can verify this or tell me I'm wrong, it seems like the programs and the software are what is really important. So when we talk about technology, how do you define that?
I do define it as those software and systems to support business operational processes. But, when you think about, I'll vary a little here. Technology, people think very high tech. So they do think of the computers, they think of software. It gets back to basics. Anything you can do in a process, you could do on paper. It might be like infinitely long and painful to do it on paper, but that's where you start with a good process, right? And then when you speed it up and automate it, you end up in a software situation. And so when we say technology, that's the software we're talking about, the software that takes your basic operational business processes and makes them run more smoothly. It makes them run more automatically if need be, and more quickly, right? Like picture a bank trying to do all its transactions on paper. That wouldn't work too well, right? So that's what, when I say technology, that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Andrea, even stepping off on that, you mentioned business processes, and they're very much interwoven with the technology that supports them. What are the major processes that a business owner should consider? And then how do you help them prioritize where to focus?
That's a great question. So I think of any business as having kind of a core part, which is marketing, sales, and delivery of their service and product, right? And so marketing, you got to get leads, you got to get people interested in what you're selling. Sales, you got to convert those to sales. And then once you've made that sale, you need to actually deliver the service and product that you promised. If you don't have those three, you don't really have a business, right? So, that's what it all comes down to. So those are three really core areas that you should look at in terms of optimizing how you do them to create value in the company. Then there's what I call ancillary services, which are no less important. And those are things like financial management, the HR, communications, file management, security, whether that's physical or cybersecurity. And, I could go on. There's a lot of those ancillary services that are essential to manage the business, make sure it's running smoothly. And so you've got systems there too. Like imagine running a business without an accounting system or without an HR system, right? So all of those areas are areas to examine and say, if we could do this more efficiently, if we could speed it up, if we could automate some part of the process in this area, would that help our business? Would it make it more effective? Would it make it worth more, right? In the end, and run more smoothly.
Yeah. So then when you start looking at a business, how do you help an owner decide where to start? Because each one of these things is complex, as Pat said, painful to implement. How do you help them?
Absolutely. So certainly with me, and I think also with your company, the very first step is some kind of organizational assessment to say, look, you could do all of these areas. It'd be a huge project to tackle every single area. What's the low-hanging fruit? What's in the sense of what will make the most difference to the business? So if you've got a decent accounting system and it's working okay, and that's not hampering your business at this point, then it's probably not the top area to fix. Whereas if you're having real problems with delivery of your services or products, you've got a lot of customer complaints coming in, you're struggling to keep up with the amount of business that you're handling, hey, maybe you should look at your processes and therefore your systems and technology in that area. So first looking at how the business is doing in each of those areas in an assessment type way, narrowing in on the problems, and then looking for a solution. I think, and I'm going to repeat this throughout this podcast, I believe, it's very easy to get distracted by shiny objects. Oh, I saw this ad for this cool system. We got to have it. Do you really need it? Right. So I'm going to repeat that several times. I'm promising you now.
Yeah. So Corby's used to talking me out of the newest of it. Yeah. So, I mentioned at the outset, Andrea, how hard it can be for an owner to first choose and then implement and just get it right. Why do you, and we think it's because, well, they're very busy with all kinds of different things. And oftentimes the business owners we're working with, they're founders, and they're like us. Technology, they're not particularly strong in it. They have some people who are, but it's hard to coordinate everything. And so those are some of the reasons that we think it's kind of tough to get it right. What would you say it makes it hard for owners to get it right?
I think there's a few factors. I agree with you with what you've already said, so I won't repeat those, but I definitely agree with those. And then I think there's an aspect that people don't consider, especially people outside of the software industry. If you build a piece of software, you design it to be optimized for a certain set of features, right? Like, let's say we all started a software company. We would figure out what features we want in our program, and we would optimize the whole program around those features. But that set of features may or may not be the perfect match for what the business needs. right?
Mm.
Your particular business may need a slightly different mix of features. So it's very hard to find a one-to-one match. In fact, it's almost impossible.
Mhm.
It's typical to buy off-the-shelf software, and there's a lot of good reasons for that. But to expect a perfect match between your needs and the way you do business, the way you handle your processes, and the pre-built software is, it's exactly like buying clothing, right? Like when you go to the store, you try on the clothes, you see what fits. Some things fit, some things don't. They're all your size, but they don't quite fit your body, right? Versus going to the tailor and having a bespoke suit made to your exact specifications. That's exactly buying packaged software versus custom built software. And just like clothing, if you want a custom build software, great, but is it more expensive or less expensive than that suit that you bought off the rack at the store? It's more expensive and it's more time consuming to build it custom. Yes, it fits your needs exactly, but it's a big project, bigger than most people realize, to custom build it to fit your needs. So owners are stuck in this middle saying, well, the offerings I see out there aren't quite right. I don't want to compromise. I don't want to change my processes to fit the system. And yet when I look at custom building, it's time consuming and expensive. And then you have to maintain it. You can't just build it and be done. You have to maintain it. So that's an ongoing cost and skill set that your company may not have internally. So I think that makes technology really hard to get right. And I think going in with the right mindset that by definition, you're going to need to figure out where you can compromise, which of your needs you can compromise on, and which are essential before you go looking at potential solutions, so that you know what has to match and what you can be flexible on.
Mhm. Yeah, so
Andrea, it seems like, with COVID and the transition in a lot of situations to kind of a people working from home and things like that, I would think that's probably accelerated some companies' advancement in technology. I know, for instance, here, just my own personal experience. I mean, I've been here almost 40 years and I still like certain systems that I put in place that I would be criticized for by anybody, because they're either I like to see a file and things like that, which is all, archaic. But what I realized is, being out of the office now, I can't rely on my old systems. I have to rely on our job tracker and all the online stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really forced, I think, a lot of people like me to kind of embrace technology, even though I was kind of hoping to avoid it until I managed to get out of here in a few years.
I completely agree with that. I think the societal trend has been toward computerizing and automating things and using these tools instead of paper and pen, instead of picking up the phone, right? Using a lot of computer-based tools. And that's been accelerated hugely by COVID. I think it was happening anyway, but it's forced us to do it in a very rapid manner. And that's caused a lot of strain on a lot of businesses. Think about your local restaurants. If they didn't have an online ordering system, boy, they have it now, right? Because they had to
That's a great
pivot that way
example.
to survive,
Yeah.
right? And the rest of us are dealing with, well, should I print it out or should I stick with the electronic version? And how do I send that to somebody? And, meeting via Zoom, a lot of people had never done not just Zoom, but any online conferencing, that type of thing. So I agree with you there, Walter.
Yeah. I think the other thing we're seeing, and again, it's kind of going back to this whole change in the workplace, is you need to be a lot more sensitive to your employees' needs. It's not like the good old days where someone complained, you just fired them. Now you actually have to worry about keeping them. So I think it's, when an employee comes and says, hey, this doing the schedule by hand is a real pain. Can we get a product to do it, automate it?
Mm-hmm.
We really need to say, yeah, we need to do that now to make our employees' lives easier. And it's a benefit to everybody, but that's just kind of an impetus for it.
That is absolutely true. And having what I would call a distributed system, everyone has access to that schedule. If it's in a computerized tool, if it's online, versus one person has a schedule. And if you want to see it, you got to call the person or email the person, right? So those things are certainly very valuable in a distanced workforce. And the other thing I think to keep in mind is, here we all are on Zoom, we're doing this podcast and I'm seeing you all, but I don't really know what's going on with you. It is different than if you were in the desk next to mine. It's very easy with technology to miss a whole layer of interaction. And that's true with any computer system, not just web conferencing, right? It's easy to step away from the human interaction and rely on the computer only. And I'm a big component of software and computers, but I think we need to be very, very aware in this environment of that missing human interaction layer, because your business can really suffer if you don't pay attention to that, if you don't create opportunity to interact, not only in the business meeting, but in that, gather around the water cooler and catch up, hey, how's the kids, that type of interactions. I'll just put a plug in for that in this new world that we're in.
Yeah, so Andrea read once that, yeah, at times there's a thought process in business owners' mind that to implement technology is to take the way they did it manually and make a computer do it, rather than look at what is the point of the process. And can you talk to, one, just how an owner might think about that, and two, how you actually help them understand what technology is supposed to do for them as they move ahead?
Absolutely. That's it. I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's really crucial. I see people automating their current processes without examining them, as you said. And what that means is you have an inefficient, bad process, and now you've just sped it up. It's still an inefficient, bad process. It's just being done a little bit faster, but it's still causing the same ripple effect problems that it did when it was manual. It's just happening more quickly. In fact, you might be generating more problems more quickly in other parts of the organization that way. So I think the first step before you automate anything, before you put anything onto a computer system, is to really look at that process, as you said. So one thing I'll do is say, how is this working for everyone? Typically a process is, there's sometimes when one person handles the entire process end to end, but often it's a process that involves several people interacting in the organization or several departments. And so looking at handoffs between each person or each department, right? How is that flowing? Is everything flowing well? Does each person have the information and tools they need to do their part of the process well? All of those. So we're looking at that entire end-to-end thing, that whole process, seeing how it's working and how it could be done. And some of how it could be done is distinctly different if it were computerized than if you were doing it on paper, for example, or in an Excel spreadsheet, right? If you had a system to do it. And so also taking advantage of the schedule example that I just chatted about with Walter. If it's helpful to take some information and put it in a mutually accessible place, you can't do that on paper. So maybe you're not doing that at all right now, but the software allows you to do that. It allows other people insight into that data, right? And so you can actually improve the process just by computerizing it if you do it intelligently that way. Like if you assess where the software could add extra, not just automate or speed it up, but actually add extra kind of capabilities that you wished you had had. But the first thing is start with the people and see how are they doing the work. Is that flowing well? How would you like to be able to do the work? And then selecting the right software and then doing the implementation.
Yeah. Hey, Andrea, in all your years of experience in helping owners get it right, the way we're talking about here, and choosing the right solutions, getting them implemented, are there types or categories of tech or software that you have found to be most helpful?
Well, it a little bit depends on the situation with the company, because maybe they already have tools in certain areas that are the most crucial areas. So, the caveat being that organizational assessment and see where the gaps are. But if a company had no tools whatsoever, I would say a good financial management system, like good bookkeeping and good ability to pull good reports out of that, is maybe one of the first basic things, even if it was a solopreneur with nothing else, and the reason for that is not only that tracking money is important for a business owner, but every financial transaction represents an activity in the business. It represents a sale to a customer. It represents an expenditure or investment that the business is making, something the business is doing. And so if you have good financial management, you can see what's going on in the business. It's good management information to make decisions for the owner. So I would say start there, right? There's systems that are industry specific to support that product or service delivery that I think can be really important, depending, like for a simple example, people understand law firms, right? The lawyer tracks their time against a case, then they issue a bill, they track the bill and so forth. That's hard to do manually. I know some law firms that still do it manually, but that's a really good example of an industry specific platform that's really helpful to manage all of that efficiently, so that the high paid lawyer is not wasting their time on administrative bureaucratic tasks of tracking their time and doing billing, right? Marketing and sales is another area. Again, if the marketing is going super well and the sales are fine and the transition to the delivery part is all going smoothly, then okay, fine. But most people need some kind of way to track the leads they're trying to attract, what happens with those leads. Like, again, that's just like the financial system. I think that generates a huge amount of useful data to decide how to manage the business. Where did we get these leads? Were they good leads? Did they convert? How quickly did they convert? Could we shorten that cycle? Those are direct impact on revenue. And if you get that right and you get it really smooth, and when you go to exit the business and you want to sell it, if you have that marketing, sales, delivery engine working smoothly, that's hugely valuable to the person buying it. They can, change accounting systems, right, if they need to, but that marketing, sales, delivery is your magic that you've created, and the smoother that's running, the more valuable the business will be. In my, I'm not a business valuation expert, but that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, no, we would
Andrea,
agree with that.
a funny story on that. Back in the early days of GRF, I remember one of our senior partners, we kept track of our time by hand. Well, this was, which was legitimate at the time. This was before.
Absolutely.
So we had these timesheets, and during tax season, your timesheets get really big because you're working on lots of clients. And it came time to do billing, and one of the founding partners couldn't find his written timesheet. It turned out, fortunately, it had gotten mixed up with a client's tax return, and he had mailed it to a client who fortunately called him up and said, "Hey, I think I have something you want."
Oh, my.
Wow, that is scary.
Yeah.
Thank goodness he found him.
Right.
Andrea, when you were talking about marketing sales a couple of minutes ago in regard to categories, would that be the CRM as well, the customer relationship management? Is that synonymous?
Somewhat. So yes, it's definitely including a CRM. So tracking the people that come in, right? Like your possible leads, and then what happens to them. Do you email them? Do you call them? What happened? What was the result? And then you might have additional systems. For example, a consulting firm might have a contract management system. Like once that lead wants to buy, you're going to prepare the contract, you're going to send it, you're going to track that. So if you have 5 customers, easy to track. If you have 500 customers, you might need a system there, right? So that marketing piece of getting the lead, the sales piece, which sometimes is part of the CRM and sometimes is separate, and then a smooth transition from that CRM and whatever sales piece into the delivery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Andrea, do you ever find there are clients that really think they should automate everything, and when in actuality they don't need to?
Yes. Why, yes. And it goes right back to that organizational assessment, what is causing problems in your business? What's causing your revenue to suffer, causing your people to become disengaged, right? So I had a client that they had 2 systems that were both essential in their business. And there was one point where information had to be transferred one system to the other. And there was a person manually taking the information out and keying it in. And the owner was like, we got to automate that. And the person who did it, her point of view was, in a month, we do this 5 times. There's 5 times we transfer this information. And I said, okay, done. It's not worth it. You need to transfer it, and then you need to double check it, right? Because human errors, so you're going to make a mistake sometimes. But with 5 people a month, it's never going to be worth it to automate that.
Yeah, that's kind of what came to mind. Is so often I've heard that, well, we have to make sure that systems talk, but I think the issue is the data being transferred reliably so that the information is accurate. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And also don't take a year to try to fix it.
Yeah. And it's very volume dependent, right? Like if that had been 500 or 1,000 people records that had to be transferred, I'd be like, yeah, you absolutely should automate that. Even if the person doing it was doing a great job, because the chances are they're human, they're going to make some mistakes and the volume is going to grow. And so then you say, okay, that's a candidate. But if it doesn't meet those criteria, Yeah, I'm completely with you. Like just, it's again, that shiny object syndrome, which I said I would refer to, like it's very tempting to make everything automated, but you have to do a cost benefit analysis on that.
Yeah.
Okay, but
But Andrea,
along those lines though, what about the timing? Because let's say you're expecting and forecasting significant growth, but you're not there yet.
Mhm.
And you could continue to go with what your current process and says everything's working, it ain't broke. So, but you're forecasting a lot of growth, and it should. What can you speak about the timing of implementation?
Yes, absolutely. That's a situation a lot of my clients face because they are experiencing and planning for additional rapid growth. And so, some of them want to implement a system now that's going to take them, like, if you think of a staircase of business growth, it's not really a slope, it's like a stair step, right?
Mhm.
And they want to jump 5 steps up and get this really snazzy system. And that's going to be too much for them at first, right? The challenges involved in going too far too fast, or it's going to be a real burden to jump so fast. So you want to look, what I say is a stair step or 2 ahead, which means basically, like in my book, a year or 2 ahead, and say, do the systems I have today support me for the next year or 2 of growth? And if so, leave them be for now, right? And I'm talking about expected growth. Like, you got your current trend and then you're making other changes in the business to try to increase your growth. And you got to look at what that looks like and try to prepare for the next year or 2. On the flip side, you don't want to wait too long. If you experience sudden unexpected growth, a lot of companies did during COVID, believe it or not, right? They were unexpectedly benefited by COVID and they had to, well, then you got to act really fast, because the longer you operate in an overwhelmed situation, the worse it is for your business. And so then you have to, and that's where you might get outside help to select the right system, figure out how to implement it, have a real plan for implementation, which is something I really feel strongly about, and then get that implemented, because your current staff are going to be so busy with the unexpected growth that they're not going to have time to step out and project manage this giant change. So sometimes if you're in the midst of that high growth and transferring systems is not realistic because of the time of the year, maybe it's your busy season, something like that, you can put temporary supplementary systems in place that will speed up certain key parts. Like, look at the bottlenecks. Could we speed up this bottleneck with an extra person or a supplementary system that will just get us through that bottleneck until we get to our slow season, and then we upgrade, right? See, there's some things you can do to manage the timing within the constraints of the business. And I think the key is don't choke the business, right? You want to keep the growth going. But don't try to leap ahead so that you only have to do this once every 10 years. That's an unrealistic thought. So grow steadily up those stair steps.
Yeah. Andrea, hopefully everybody listening is going to call you when they need help. But say they don't, but they have somebody, what should they listen for in a technology advisor, or what would the warning signs be of a technology advisor that might not be best suited, just so owners can think more thoroughly? Absolutely.
That is a great question. You want someone who understands your business, who's willing to come in and understand your processes, right? So often you'll have, let's say, a software rep who's really expert in that piece of software, and they can give you all the technical information you need about how their software works. But you need somebody who's going to advocate for your processes and how to match up that system with your needs, right? We talked about that at the beginning. And even though the software rep might be very good-hearted and good-intentioned, that may not be their special skill set. So you may need another person. Doesn't need to be me. It could be someone in your organization or another trusted advisor who can take a look at your needs and talk to that expert on the software and see how your needs mesh with that software. And a good software advisor, like someone who's a technical rep, will appreciate having that middle person who can translate the needs of the business into the features of software and have an intelligent conversation with them. It's a weird mix of business acumen and technical expertise that you have to marry. So, having that person can really make the difference between a successful selection and implementation or a failure.
Very good.
Hey, Andrea, are there some best practices for the implementation side of this? Because there's always the people who are very pro tech, and then there's the people who really would prefer to stay away from it. Are there some best practices to make sure that once you've made such a substantial investment, that's actually being utilized the way you envision in your organization?
Yes, I'm very glad you asked that. There's a couple of things. First, when you first think about selecting a new piece of software, start planning like a framework of your plan for implementation even then, because you're going to need to know all the pieces that are going to go into the implementation, and you can start working on that before you've selected the software. So are we going to need to transfer data to the new system? Does the new system need to integrate or connect to and talk to other systems, right? So these are useful things when you're selecting the new system to understand, well, how well do they support data transfer? How well do they support the needed data integrations, right? So there's some stuff you can do right away. And then there's the change management side, the human side. And again, I would say start thinking about this even before you finally select the software. In order for a system to be successful, there's always people using it, right? There are people using that software system. And if they are not going to use it, there was no point in buying it. So what makes somebody adopt and use software? The usability of the software. Does it make sense to them when they open the screen? Can they see what to do, right? So that's part of your software selection process. Does it support the part of the process that they're having trouble with? Are they personally motivated because they see how this software is helping them? So the more you can help them get trained and understand how this will benefit them in their work, they're going to be much better at adopting. And then some accountability. So a CRM is the classic example. Salespeople, this is a vast generalization. I'm sure there's exceptions out there. Salespeople do not like to log all their activity in a CRM. It is boring. It is time consuming. They don't like it. It's tedious. I get that. So how do you hold them accountable and incentivize them to keep things in there? And the best salespeople will see if you show them how putting their data in will bring them back to being able to focus on the right leads and make more sales, then they'll be motivated to do it. But even so, they need regular reminders. So again, you're designing not just the implementation process, but the process after it's implemented, it's in use to make sure that it's successful. So, the short answer is plan,
Yeah.
Think about it in advance, and then really have a very clear plan for implementation. Don't just buy it and be like, oh, now we have to figure out how to implement.
Yeah, that's been really good. This whole session has been really, really helpful to us, and I'm sure to our listeners as well. So thank you very, very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to talk to all of you. And I love the way what you do and what I do meshes so well that we're having this really interesting conversation about it.
Yeah, it really does. So final two questions. Anything you'd like to promote today, and how can our listeners contact you?
So promoting, I am looking for business owners who are growing rapidly and have conquered the initial things. They've got staff, they're $1 million+ in revenue. And they are growing really rapidly, and they can see that it's time to step up that next stair step to organize their operations, build their capacity so they can handle the influx of new customers. So I would say if you know anyone who is in that situation, I can definitely help there. In terms of contacting me, I have my name there. You can email me. You can go on my website and schedule a free consultation. Right when you go on my website, there's a button that says schedule a consultation. So you can click right there and get access to me. I offer this free consult, and we talk about what your business is facing and what your goals are, and figure out if it's a good match. Or I have a huge referral network, so I often connect people with others that can also serve them. So I think that's all there is.
Great. Thanks again. Really, really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Enjoyed it.
And listeners, if you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, you can reach Pat at 301-859-0860. And you can reach me at 301-951-9090. You can also access resources at exitreadiness.com, grfcpa.com, and nslp.com. As always, thanks for listening. And until next time on the Exit Readiness podcast, this is Walter Dial and Pat Ennis and Corby McGordon signing off.